Hello, everyone. It is July 28, 2022, and you're watching the Awesome 10X Philippine Market Update. This is Nikki. Let's begin. Okay, I'm sharing my screen. Let's first look at the Philippine markets and read some news. Okay, all right. So in the index, you could see that the PSCI is going up 1%, 6,300 today after the Fed raised the rates 75 basis points, widely expected. We do have to take note that the Philippine peso is now still trying to hover, still grappling with the 56 peso level. Let's take a look at that. We eased off on the dollar peso over the last few days from about 56.44. We were able to go down to about 55.36 or roughly 1 peso. However, with the last 2 days, you can see that as the Fed raised the rates yet again by another 75 basis points, we are seeing more demand towards dollars against the Philippine peso over the very short term. And in the primary trend, you can still see that the dollar strength is very strong. Since this year, you can see that the dollar peso has sharply devalued from 50 pesos to 55.7 as of now. So those are a few things to take note of as well, given the headlines. Let's take a look at the Philippine market. You've got the indices rallying a bit after Wall Street had a spike on the Fed move last night. Let's take a look. So market value is about 2.5 billion pesos. Let's first read the numbers. So let's begin. All right, your SM is near 800 pesos. BPI is 90. Aboitiz Equity Ventures is 56.9. Ayala Corp is 614. Ayala Land is 24.85. BDO is 118. PLDT is about 1680. Metro Bank is 48. Jollibee is 207. JG Summit is 53. Wilcon is about 25 pesos. Aboitiz Power is 32.6. URC is 111. ICT is 185. Emperador is 19. Asen is 8.4. Robinson's Land is 16.9. Mega World is 2.3. Luciatan Group is 8.87. AGI is 9.87. San Miguel is 105 pesos. Pure Gold is about 30 pesos. Converge 1988. Security Bank 89.9. Meralco 365. Globe 2086. MPI 3.66. Monde 14.4. GT Cap 460.6. SM Prime 3605. There are some interesting things to talk about in the index. So for instance, in the index, we have seen Monde already rallying from about a low of about 12.9 here, 12.8. It has rallied back towards 14.4. We argue, though, that despite the lack of negativity today, because Monde Nissan has been able to clear out their food safety issues, we do have to understand that there could be a lower sales demand. We can only know that on August 11, 2022 for your Monde Nissan. It's also interesting to note, as we saw Aboitiz Power climb up to 32.6, we do note that in the BBM, President BBM here in the Philippines, discussing renewable energy, we do believe that the Philippines will benefit a lot from many investors if we do add more hydropower, gas, and all of these are in the business of Aboitiz Power. We are seeing Aboitiz Power trade at 32.65. Interestingly, as the market is investing in a lot of clean energy, the strength of coal continues. So Semirara Mining and Power is still high, 37 and 41 and 42. Take note that this 42 pesos has not been reached since the levels of 2017 in August, and the recent high was 49.65. You may want to actually take a look at coal stocks for a selling zone as it continues higher. Obviously, this was moving up because of the rising profits of coal stocks worldwide. But if we believe that this is already highly valued, then you might actually have to take a look at whether the profits really meet that pricing. The profits will be results. The results of Semirara will be known on August 3, 2022. And arguably, whatever Semirara will report will impact your DMCI. DMCI is trading at about 9.7 today. It could potentially try to retest 1055 with the rallies of Semirara. But in my view, within the next few earnings season, you will now see on August 3 and August 10 on whether DMCI's numbers and Semirara Lara can support those high valuations. Okay, let's take a look at some names that have gone up recently. We've seen, as you can see from the indices, that SM and BPI, some of the names here are trying to recover. Let's take a look at the big indices first. Okay, so SM Investments continues to be a downtrend, although it is trying to recover from its lows here of about 750 and 744 found on June 23. We have yet to know if SM can rebound. I suppose that one of the biggest ticket items that people would look at on today's numbers is on SM. Why? It's because SM Investments holds a number of your malls, a number of your retail areas in the Philippines. And if the Philippine economy should actually reopen, and that is what President BBM already said in SONA, no more lockdowns. If that were the case, that Filipinos are back on track to reopen, you've got a lot of face-to-face schooling happening on August 22. Let's see if the Filipinos can actually come back despite inflationary headwinds for your SM investments. We don't agree that SM is to be forever, not looked at. Nonetheless, so far there are a few bullish notes seen in a reopening economy. So let's see whether SM and their GDP and earnings will actually be in line at the very least with expectations. Let's take a look at Ayala Corp here. Your Ayala Corp here is trading at 600 pesos. You are back towards your 2020 area lows, not necessarily at the lows because 2020 you hit 450s here. Nonetheless, that 600 area is pretty much same in your 2014 arena. So there might be some people looking for oversold areas on your Ayala Corps already, given the drop here from 900 to 600. Not that said, no, it's very hard to say whether this will rebound. It all depends, I believe, on their earnings coming out this August. Most of these would have to be asked. It is a question mark upon their earnings. But if you ask, since it's quite oversold over the last 6-7 months, there might be a chance for some rebound, albeit very short term, from about 600 to 700 if Ayala Corporation actually meets their numbers. Let's take a look at your entire movements. Your Globe Telecom is now trading at 2,084. It will be giving dividends, of course, this August and reporting this August. So around August, you will see a lot of earnings reports. My view here is that take the earnings as they come. If there are companies that are actually in line with expectations and some actually beating, they might actually be bought in this recent dip, especially for Globe that actually pays huge dividends of about 80 pesos a year. So the 2,000 area might actually be supported, even this 2,080 already. Let's take a look at Pure Gold here. You're seeing already Pure Gold tried to be bought here at about 30 pesos. And most recently, as it crashed towards 28.70, upcoming earnings on Pure Gold is August 16. If it reports that their numbers continue to have huge cash flows, you might actually see a rebound on some of these names like Pure Gold and even some of your Globe. Your BPI, your banks are now trading at 90 pesos. So it has recently rebounded from 86 to 90. It's interesting to look at the banks because worldwide, as the interest rates are rising, there is a chance that your banks can actually rebound a bit. We're seeing Metro Bank so far get the support here at about 46 pesos. The markets can continually be choppy. My view is that the markets can be choppy at these levels because it is an earnings read. It's an earnings read. Your earnings will dictate how it moves. If it moves, if your earnings are actually in line, you might actually see these Metro Banks rally back to 50 or even 55. So, and any pullbacks here at 40 and 45 so far is getting a lot of buyers. So you might actually get some limited downside if you're buying somewhere here to 45 to 40. In general, your PSEI today, as we are seeing, is hanging on. It could be a bear market rally, or it could actually break out. It all depends on the numbers. So that said, you've got this primary downtrend intact. The bears would argue that a higher interest rate this year would actually not be good for most property segments. but probably good for your banks. So at least in the short term, because of rising net interest income, take a look at how these stocks would move. If your current 6,000 actually ends up support, then you could rally somewhere here about 6.4 or 6.5. It's very little, it's very muted, unless you really have very good numbers. So if it's bad though, then you can read us somewhere here at 5.7. So it's really a matter, in my view, of earnings. And today, let's take a look at some earnings that have been released, in particular, Wilcon Depot. So Wilcon Depot has posted another good earnings. You're seeing a 1 billion pesos second quarter net income for the year. And let's take a look at their entire press release here and why the market is actually ecstatic that the Filipinos continue to shop in Wilcon despite your recession fears. Let's take a look at this. So Wilcon has reported that net sales are still up 23% year on year to 8.3 billion pesos. Their sales have grown comparably 15% for the second quarter with a 3.2 billion gross profit for second quarter with a gross profit margin rate of 39%. The leading home improvement and finishing construction supplies retailer reported their second quarter end results. We built on our first strong quarter and delivered our best quarter net sales and earnings so far this second quarter. You're seeing actually that the Bello clan aren't seeing any disruptions in the business segment, with net income even growing another 50% or reaching 1 billion pesos just for this quarter alone. The jump has been attributed to simply higher sales volume, and the gross profit margin was expanded by offset by the okay. There was a bit of an erosion in their gross profit margin due to higher operating expenses. Nonetheless, their gross profit for the year, at least for this quarter, has already been up 30% with net sales rising 1.54 billion, continuing their store network expansion. The 2 new depots were added during the quarter, bringing 76 the total number of branches at the close of the period. My view here is that actually with Wilcon's business doing well, it is unsurprising why Pure Gold has also started to, if you saw the news, we'll go to the news later on as well. Pure Gold has been partnering with a Thailand company in the business also of home furnishings. This to compete with obviously Wilcon. What we're seeing here is the dominance of Wilcon in the home furnishings business, and everyone that is trying to improve their home or constructing a home is mainly buying from Wilcon Depot. Your rental and net income rose marginally at about 5%. Let's see all the numbers here. Cash dividends were already distributed 819 million pesos to all their stockholders so far in April 2022. In parallel, first half net income even reached 1.85 billion, up 49% for the year, driven mainly by a higher net sales. Okay, so what we're seeing here is that they are on track to meet growth. It is still being traded as a growth stock. We're seeing that Wilcon has met the metrics that is needed for what a growth stock should be displaying at, and that 20% growth on your sales, that 50% growth in your earnings is something that the world or even the Filipinos should be proud of. So wonderful numbers from Wilcon. So it is unsurprising that Wilcon today is getting quite a big jump after seeing that numbers report. It could be argued that the market, seeing that earnings report, is willing to buy Wilcon, now trading at 24.85 after the news. So from a peak of about 36 pesos here, it has fallen to a low of about 21. Where will your supply resistance come from in case technicals get bothered? You've got technical resistance here at 28, but let's take a look. What exactly is the price per share of Wilcon at these levels of 24.85? To see that, we can just go to the stats here, go to the analytics. Since Wilcon is actually trading in your PSEI, we might as well just use PSEI here and then use fundamental. So Wilcon here is now trading with a dividend yield of 1%. At 24.75. You've got a price to earnings ratio here of about 36 times multiple here at these levels. You can clearly see it's being traded at a growth stock. It is at a premium over the rest. And when you look at the PE ratios, you can clearly see which are the ones that are pretty much below PEs. No, GT Cap trading 9 times PE. You've got what's this? AGI still trading at 5 times PE. You've got Mega World. The property segment is really looking very doldrum these days. No, Emperador and Wilcon are both sporting 30 times multiple, 44 times for your San Miguel, 45 times for your SM Prime, 80 times for your Monde. So you might actually be a little bit skeptic about the earnings if Monde doesn't live up to that price earnings ratio today. But I would argue some names like the banks might actually be looked at more on the price to book, and the smaller the entity is, it is going to be harder for them to be properly valued. Sometimes the weakness of the Philippine market isn't about the valuation, but mostly the lack of liquidity. But good job to Wilcon. Would look at let's take a look at the market cap. So Wilcon is now trading at 100 billion pesos. So it makes about 4 billion pesos of income a year, around 25 to 30 times multiple, depending on what they'll earn next year. That's quite expensive, but the market likes the numbers. That's why it is being priced like that. So it's being traded as a growth stock, definitely. Um, so you just have to understand this is trading at a premium, just like other entities like Emperador is trading at a premium. So let's take a look at Emperador here. Emperador here, of course, had news that they are now dual listed in Singapore. And how is it listed in Singapore here? Emperador Inc. SGX. So yeah, and this is the Emperador dual listing in Singapore. We'll see if the Singaporeans love Emperador as well. And I guess it all matters on the numbers coming August 12th. We take a look at CHP, considering that Cemex Holdings last month was actually rallying here from about 60 cents to 90 cents. So far, it is consolidating a little bit at 75 cents. Looks to still trade at higher lows. So interestingly, it has secured a 6 billion peso loan from the banks to continue their expansion of their cement plant. Well, what else can we take a look at from the earnings here? Okay, let's take a look, no? So the outlook for the Philippines is dimming for the second half, despite the IMF growth upgrades said in Inquirer here. The economic prospects for the second half is mainly due to external shocks, no? So it's not the Philippines problem, but abroad where you're seeing strong dollar, a really difficult inflationary headwind for the world, most especially for us, the Filipinos. Your GDP in the first quarter still managed to grow 8% in the first quarter, although the second quarter, we'll see how it looks, no? Due to the reopening of the economy. Of course, we just recently saw the earthquake in Abra. That would also affect your infrastructure in the Philippines. We'll see how fast the Philippine economy can rebound, given these. Usually in the second half, we do have a lot of these climate change problems, whether it be an earthquake or a natural disaster. So it's more about how fast we can work upon these disruptions created by climate change. Speaking of climate change, we do note that the Philippines have been strongly advocating solar energy and even adding nuclear. With that, let's take a look at how solars are being traded in the Philippines. So far, you'll see the bullishness in ASEN continue here. ASEN continues to trade higher here from 6 to 8.4. Recent resistance at 9 pesos. You're seeing SPNEC here still trading quite just sideways, no? Just sideways between 1.5 to 165. ASLAG, the IPO, is still below 2, although it is trying to rebound for a reset from about 1.68 here of a low, a rebound today towards 1.82. There might be some selling pressure though here at about 2 pesos, given the IPO still has a lot of resistances. We argue that there was about 100 I think there's at least 100 million shares or more that is still a supplier here at about 2 pesos. That would actually limit the advance unless the market, of course, is very happy with the potential dividends that ASLAG will give over time. So Raslag has already restarted sorry, not restarted, opened the Raslag Power Plant 3, and they are in the works for the Raslag Power Plant number 4. So just like how Pure Gold and Wilcon Depot continue to raise their sales and their earnings and eventually their dividends, we look forward for what Raslag can do towards growth and stock investors in the Philippines, given that the market in the Philippines is generally bullish in energy investments, particularly renewable. So ASLAG is a pure play in your solar and is something to take a look at. Good to see that rebound today. We do have to take a look how these resistances will be met in the next few months, if ever. Okay, news-wise, no, let's take a look on their news. Of course, there is that what's this? There was this news about Dennis Oy, obviously, on the getting a TRO from BDO. Let's read again about that. No, Dennis Oy, BDO news. So Dennis Oy scrambling to appease jittery creditors. Shares of BDO Dennis Oy firms sinks after the debt default mess. The Empire debt is in focus after a default scare. So there has been a lot of problems in some countries about companies with massive debts. We saw how Evergrande defaulted in China. And I think it is signaling that there might be a potential domino corporate default that is plaguing the nation, most especially the banks. No, liabilities are doubling to some $4.6 billion in 2020. Udena said that this week it settled their debt matter with creditors. So far, let's take a look at what exactly is happening to the share prices of these firms. You're seeing Dito is down 20 to 390 and still trading at primary downtrend. So you're seeing illiquid for a lot of Dennis Oy stocks, no, in particular this one. I think that what has been happening is that Dennis Oy has been slowly just shifting most of the shares from himself to other people, like what happened with the Razon, diba? So that's what happened with PHR. The Philippine Resorts was eventually siphoned out to to Razon, diba? Let's take a look at that, to Bloomberry. PH Resorts Group Holdings news. Philippine tycoon Duterte's ally stocks tumble on default notice from banks. Yeah. So far, I don't think that the market is confident, and you see that new low, and in fact, retest pa for PH Resorts here at about 70 cents. Despite news, initially there was a spike here on May because of Razon. Let's take a look at that specific news. PH Resorts, Razon. So yon, Bloomberry on May 12 was signing a deal with Dennis Uy's Cebu, Pampanga casinos, and that actually managed to help at the very least PHR. So we'll see what's gonna happen, but that seems to be the case, no? What's been happening right now is the assets of Dennis Uy are being sold or done into a JV partnership with other tycoons, and that's also what's been happening with so Razon, we can see, has been clearly diversifying his profits towards many businesses. ICT's Razon has been involved in Bloomberry, has been involved in Manila Water, the Ayala company. We know that Razon was able to buy Ayala's Manila Water at about 14 pesos. Interestingly, Manila Water is now trading at 15. You might actually be taking a look at 14 area, where Razon actually bought in. So there are actually interesting companies in the Philippines that are still paying cash dividends. For Manila Water, they actually pay 1 peso. So let's just take a look at what Manila Water is scheduled to pay this year. No, so from a dividend perspective, some dividend investors in the Philippines might actually be interested for Manila Water. Manila Water paid 50 cents during 2021. They used to pay as high as 90 cents. So it all depends, of course, in their um, dividend policy is dependent on their earnings. But let's take a look at their dividend history. So ito. So there have been years na 86 cents, roughly 3% yield for Manila Water. So if they end up paying 50 cents, so tapos na yan, for next year na yon, no? For 2023, if they resume paying 50 cents, those who are buying at 15 below may actually be interested to get some Manila Water. It's not that big of a dividend play, but something to take a look at nonetheless kapag 14 below si Manila Water. 14 is where Ricky Razon bought Manila Water. Let's take a look on more news here. I think everyone is already aware that the Philippines is no choice, no? Philippines would have no choice but to raise the dollar peso interest rates. So from an interest rate perspective, that usually is positive for your banks. So your banks here like BPI might actually benefit for lack of wala masyadong exposure to loans like BDO. Let's take a look at the banks here, no? So you've got Metro Bank, BDO, BPI, SecB, Union Bank. Let's take a look at each one of them. Security Bank is now trading at 90 pesos, back to its previous 2020 area lows. Look at the earnings coming out in August, might actually jump from the recent areas if they actually have decent profits amidst a recession. SecB trading at 90. A lot of these are setups for the earnings. So we can see that the market is unwilling to sell off before the numbers and unwilling to buy up. Ito, Metro Bank, may konting buy up from 46 to 48. Lumabas na ba earnings? Earnings will be result July 28. Let me take a look if lumabas na ba Metro Bank results. Metro Bank. Rising interest rates seem to benefit Metro Bank. Yes, agree. So hindi pa yun, ayun, dati pa to February 25. But we could see that banks generally benefit on a rising interest rate, and with the Bangko Sentral already signaling more rate hikes in the Philippine peso just to contain inflation and the devaluation, I think that you can see why some investors are placing their bets on Metro Bank. Look at this. Investors placed amid a rising interest rate environment pushing profits higher this year. Metro Bank Trading Department showed that this is the most actively traded, 10th most actively traded Metro Bank. Issues are 46.70. Year to date, the bank shares price was down 13.5%. Investors with high risk appetite might want to buy tailwinds in the bank sector due to better margins, rising interest rates, the ongoing push to go digital, and given the higher fee-based income and savings growth. I would say agree to, kasi I would agree with this, mainly because in general, net interest income of the banks grow in a rising interest rate environment. Everything from overnight lending facilities will usually go up for Metro Bank. What you want to look at in Metro Bank's numbers is how their net interest income will do this quarter, which I doubt is anything different from what they've done last quarter. No, so last quarter, first quarter income posted the following. They've netted 22 billion pesos last year, which is 60% higher than the 13.8 billion peso profit it made in 2020. Earnings more than doubled. Sorry, this is revenues, no? Earnings more than doubled. Hindi, that is, no, that's earnings. Sorry, that's net income. Its operating income in 2021 was 100 billion pesos. Net interest margin has been very stable at 3.4%. You can imagine that these banks are awash with cash. Non-performing loans of Metrobank decreased by 12% year on year, falling to 2.2%. NPL coverage improved to 174.7% from 163. So with that, no, with these potential tailwinds for Metrobank, you might actually argue that Metrobank and GT Cap are actually buyable, no? So the movements here, the financials, specifically Metrobank, may be a buy, um, value play, no? GT Cap and Metrobank. So GT Cap here has been falling mainly because of consumer discretionary headwinds, the thinking that Toyota Motors will not deliver well. However, the question is, if Metrobank does well, is it already priced in at 460 or 440 pesos? The argument here is that possible priced in yan. So if Metrobank actually manages to rebound and breaks out after good earnings, hailed the strongest bank pa. You might actually get a strong re-rating from MBT. Something tells me that the actively traded Metro Bank might actually outperform. Metro Bank here trading 216 billion pesos market cap. You've got dividend yield of Metro Bank is also quite high at about 4.5%. No, look at that. At 48 pesos, your 12-month dividend per share was 2 peso. Really interesting how the banks today are traded at in the Philippines. One of the highest yields. Take a look just at the dividend, no? The high yield plays in the Philippines are Aboitiz Power, 4.4%. You've got Globe, 5% here. You've got this one, wow, Lushotan Group. Although I am not a big fan of tobacco, so I wouldn't care much about that. ICT, 4%. This one, Metrobank, 4.5%. You've got Telephone, 5%. URC, 4.7%. Also trading at 110 pesos. Actually, from a dividend perspective, I think you want to take a look at the bank, Metrobank. Take a look at that, and then interesting movements din tong URC. Take a look at that. It looks like URC has found some bottom here at about 100 pesos. Although yan, trading range, CURC, no? You've got buyers here at 100, but a lot of sellers at 120 either way. What else do we have to take a look at? Today's top gainers. Okay. So after Aboitiz Power, you've got movements. 12% up. Hindi, wag na natin tignan yung two trades. This one, Balay, up 11% today. You've got Tugs, 110. 200 trades, 350 trades DFNN, 400 trades Union Bank, 80 pesos. Speaking of Union Bank at 80 pesos, after the dilution, no, baka people might be interested to take a look at Union Bank's numbers yet again. Because Union Bank has historically done very well on profitability. So, lumabas na yung profits niyan last year, 2021. That was very good. That's why it went up from about 30, 40 pesos to as high as 100 pesos. We've got some breakouts happening on Union Bank, BDO, something to take a look at. I think banks are likely to perform pretty well in a rising interest rate environment. Kasi I think they are really conservative when managing their loans, no? So the fact that yung net profit loan, non-performing loans is not big, 2% in a lot nila. If it so happens na wala masyadong credit card defaults or any of that sort, then you should see both banks actually do well. Something to really be aware of. Okay, so thank you very much. I'll see you again next Thursday. And for those who are going to continue to watch, I'll be discussing later on the small account challenge. The small account challenge, I'll be discussing how people with less than $5,000 accounts can open accounts abroad. I'm gonna try to show it through eToro, although over time I'm also gonna share mga Webull. I'm gonna share, of course, I use IBKR, but I'll explain with a journal and a daily, weekly discussion to you on how small accounts can make $100 to $1,000 every month. Not guaranteed, but of course, you watch for the journey. So see you again, and peace. Bye bye.